Greetings. This is Arvette McLean of Speak, the Universe Listens. As a very young person, I always felt that I carried the weight of the world on my shoulders, having to make grown-up decisions in order to survive a life marked with physical, sexual, and emotional abuse. While my face was smiling on the outside, on the inside, I always secretly cried and felt miserable. However, over the years, I learned some gems that helped to turn my life around. I now get to live the life of my dreams, filled with love, travel, and wonderment. And I am absolutely passionate about sharing what I have learned with you. If you want to live your best life, tune in each week as I, along with some amazing guests, share these life-changing gems with you. Inspired to be more, do more, have more. Greetings and welcome to today's episode of Speak the Universe Listens. Today's topic is the power of no. And we have with us, joining us once again, Regina Foster, who is actually a gerontologist as well as a makeup consultant and artist. But today she's going to discuss with us about the power of no. And I actually wanted to talk to Regina about the word no because Regina is someone who has done a lot of things in her life. And I would like to just talk about how the word no has the power to both free us as well as the power to hold us in a prison. So let's first talk about how the word no can free us.
Okay. So I think it can free us if we were once to the point where we couldn't say it, which I have been many times, just not comfortable saying no. I've always been a pleaser to my parents and my friends, and so when someone needs me that I love and loves me, I feel like if I tell them no, or I felt like, I'm much better at it, but I felt like at some point when I told them no that I would be letting them down. But then when I help them out or think that I help them out, I'm not giving them all of me because it's not something that I wanted to do at that moment. And so I'm the one that ends up feeling bad.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a problem that especially women, but I think so many of us have, is saying no and wanting to please and wanting to be there to help, and then realizing somewhere along the way that I'm saying yes to everyone else, but I'm really saying no to myself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of times we miss out on experiences, and I know I had mentioned before, actually I had written in my book about how I know that if anybody asks me to do anything, that I'm present for them.
Right.
But when it was coming to myself,
Oh, yeah.
I wasn't doing anything that I told myself I would do.
Right.
And so somewhere along the way, we have to be able to make that shift where we're being accountable and I guess loving towards our own selves and able to be able to say no. So what do you think are some ways or some tools, or how did you come to the place where you're able to say no more often?
Well, when I just realized that the times that I didn't say no that I wanted to, how bad I felt, and it could have just been, just stressed me out, and so I'm like, why am I doing this to me just to please somebody else? And then, I would slowly start saying, maybe it was easier for me to say no to my spouse, or maybe easier to say no to my children, and then eventually my friends and even, employer, like that I'm not comfortable with this, ethically, this is not something that I agree with. And it's even more difficult, I think, in the workplace to say no about something that you're not comfortable with, because it's like, it's my paycheck on the line. This is how I feed my family. So if I say no, I'm not doing that, is that going to affect me later? Is that going to affect my evaluation? But like I said, if I'm not good for anybody, I'm not good for myself.
And that's something my mom has told me for years, and it was just really hard for me to embrace the whole ideal that if it's something that you don't want to do, you're not feeling happy about doing it. Her whole philosophy is that you're really not giving a gift. You're really not helping if you're not feeling good about it. And it was something that's hard for me to see, I guess, on a case by case basis. But on an overall global basis, I understand that perfectly. But it's so hard to say no to someone that's sitting right in front of you, and you feel like, okay, I could do that. Like, that's something I could do. So to say no, that's like, is really hard.
Particularly when you're caught off guard. Now, if someone asks me and I say, which is another technique that I've gained, because I also can be spontaneous or impulsive, and I'll say something right at that moment because I'm asked at that moment. But I've started saying, well, let me think about it.
Okay.
Let me look at my schedule. Let me see, versus committing, and then now I've over committed. And so if I have time to think about it, then I also have time to think of my response, good or bad or indifferent, you know, and I have better explanation, because sometimes people just don't want to hear no, and just who I am. I feel like it's hard for me to tell you no without telling you why also, you know. And, you know, even as a kid, I was always one of them kids that you had to have a reason. And even as an adult, like, nothing happens just because. Everything happens because of something. And I want to know what that explanation is. So I feel I want to give my family and friends and employer and whoever else I come in contact with that same respect, that this is the reason why I don't want to do it, you know, or this is the reason why I do want to do it.
Yeah, I like that idea of taking space to think about it and to see what else is in your schedule. So particularly something you just said was you want to be able to tell people why you're saying no. But that's a good point too, because I hate for people to tell me no.
Right.
So so it's hard for me to tell someone no because I don't want to hear no. So that's a really good thing to be able to say, well, it's because of this reason. And I know a lot of people, like, you can see on Facebook and stuff like that, where people will actually post things like, you know, be willing to say no and not, you don't have to defend your reason why you say no. But if you tell me no, tell me.
Tell me why. Tell me why. Because when I asked you to do, like you said, when I asked you to do something, it's because I trusted that you were the best person for that task, whatever that may have been. And so when you say, nah, I can't do it, it's like, ooh. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'll find somebody else that's not as qualified.
Exactly. But you know, it's funny because that's actually how I've been able to start saying no. Because people have told me, they're like, if you say no, they just gonna go to the next person. It's not like you're the only person that can provide that. And I'm like, oh, okay. That's okay. But I think I'm more like what you're saying. Like, I'm asking who I think is the most qualified to do that, or the most, you know, likely to do a great job on it. And but a lot of people are just asking, you know, and they'll just move on to the next person. And there's no, you know, sweat.
I may not be the best at it, but, you know.
Exactly. Right. So what about the reverse? Like, how often do we say no, and then that's actually closing off opportunities?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. And I'm sure that has occurred many a times. And I think particularly with pursuing jobs or pursuing business ventures, or, you know, I've had plenty of ideas, you know, where I wanted to start something, and then fear got in the way, which is another form of no. Yes, right?
Exactly.
Fear is another form of no. And so, you know, I'll put it on the back burner, and then maybe 5-10 years it was never done because, you know, of that no.
Yeah. And I am a person who, for years, I let fear paralyze me. And you just kind of get stuck in a rut, and you just doing the same things, and not willing to take And a lot of times it's not even a risk. It's just a little bend in the road,
Yeah, right.
you know.
Yeah.
But I was so quick to say no and to not be willing just to stick my foot in the water.
Yeah, yeah. I've certainly been there, and like I always thought that I was confident. You know, like I was raised. You know, you got this, and you're great. My family, we are cheerleaders. We will cheer you on. You know, when I was in the band, I was the highest stepper out there, according to my grandmother. And so I felt like I was confident to accomplish and conquer anything. But then there were some, giants that I may have faced and thought, maybe I'm not as confident as I once thought I was. And because of that, I didn't pursue it. And I feel like when I didn't, even if it were years later, I still had regrets, for not doing it. And I feel like I may have, and those things that I'm tasked that I may have tried to pursue again, I'm thinking, I would have been way further had I done it, when I needed to do it. Yeah, but I was afraid to.
Yeah, I know that going to Antarctica, I always said I wanted to put my foot on all 7 continents. And so for a long time, Antarctica was the only continent that I hadn't done. And initially, I didn't know anything about it. And so I was just thinking I can just hop on a plane and go over to Antarctica, stay in a hotel somewhere. And, I just thought it was a regular trip. And then when I realized, you can't do that. Like, you have to take a boat over there, and you're not going to be staying in a hotel, and then like there aren't like big cruise ships, they're small ships. And a lot of times when you go on ships, people tend to gravitate towards you and they want to have dinner with you and things like that. And then the smaller the ship is, the more likely, and so because I tend to be I kind of shy away from things. And then like just the whole prospect of being on a ship for a couple of weeks to get there, and then with strangers who are going to be up close and personal with you, I was just like, no. So my husband had actually basically got the trip so that we can go for my birthday, right? And I was like, no, I can't do it. And then one day I just woke up and I was like, I can do it. And so I went, and it was just like the most amazing experience of my life. And like the things that my eyes saw there, it's just so magnificent. Yeah. And so I was happy to say yes to that, and I could have missed it just because of those 2 letters, N-O.
No, it's very powerful, like you said.
Yeah. And the same with skydiving, because my friends were like, my husband and one of our other friends, they were like, we want to go skydiving. And I was like, not skydiving, but jumping out of an airplane, right? And so I'm like, that's nice. I'll be at the bottom waiting. I'll see you when you land or whatever. And then I just woke up one day and I was like, I want to do it. I want to jump. And then actually doing it, it just makes you feel different about who you are and what you're capable of. Yeah.
No, you're a daredevil. See, I'm not that type of daredevil. But I don't have the desire to, so I'm not doing it. Not doing it. I just don't have the desire.
But I feel like you just told us a story last week about how you just hopped on a plane, flew 3,000 miles to take a class. Right. And so the things that I have interest in, yes, exactly. I am pursuing those things, and there's so many things that I want to do, and it's like, why do we have to be one-dimensional as children? It's like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And then when you get there, now that I'm here, it's like, this can't be it. There's so many other things that I want to do when I grow up, and I'm still growing up, and when I'm done with that, I want to do something else, And I feel like a lot of times we may go to school and we may have a certain major, and then we just get tracked into that, and we just stick with it. And a lot of times when we get out of school, we don't even go into the field of what our major was. But then we get into that kind of field and we just stay in that field over and over again because that's what we're now comfortable with. And I think just sometimes just being willing to step outside of that box, it can be very life changing.
Yeah, I took a class on like career development, and the instructor talked about how a lot of times we do things because we're good at it and not necessarily because we want to continue doing that. And so, you know, we'll keep applying for this job as administrator because you have good executive ability and you're a good leader, but then you don't want to do that, but you'll just keep on applying because you're fearful to go and do the things that you really want to do because you've invested so much time and energy, and which is why you became good at that one thing. But it's not really where your heart is, Yeah.
And then I think a lot of times we don't really know where our hearts are. Yeah. Because we've just been doing the same thing.
Sure.
And so sometimes just experimenting around, Yeah. So even you saying yes to coming on the show, because I know there was some hesitancy.
Yeah, I was a little bit nervous because I've watched your podcast and I was like, you got some brilliant women out there that you've interviewed, and I wasn't sure what topics you wanted me to talk about. And anytime you're on camera, I've never been very comfortable on camera, even though I'm comfortable around people. I'm probably one of the most extroverted people that you'll meet, but when I know that others are watching me or there's a camera right in front of me, it makes me a little bit nervous.
Yeah. So what made you able to say yes?
Well, so I just love being in your presence. So it's hard to tell you no. We just talked about that, right?
I'm glad you didn't tell me no.
Yes. So anywhere I can help, I'm always willing to help you. But like I said, and when I'm talking about gerontology or I'm talking about beauty and things that I'm passionate about, it is a little bit more comfortable.
Good. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. And I wanted you to give your website again, how to contact you.
Okay.
We talked a little bit about it last week and some of the services that you offer. So if you can just remind the listeners of some of the services that you offer and how they can reach you.
Sure, yes. So my name is Regina Foster. You can find me under my name either on Instagram or on Facebook. My beauty name is Jinx Beauty. That's Ginx. And I am a makeup artist and a beauty consultant. So if you need my services for that as well as personal styling, I can take care of you. Thank you.
Yes, and she is such a beautiful, lovely lady. Okay. So thanks for coming on the show.
Sure, thanks for having me.
All right, and thank you guys for watching today. And don't forget to check out my website at arvettemclain.com. Click the button below to subscribe, and we'll see you next week. Bye.